War. War never changes. Well, actually, it does in Civilization, and through the Civilization games, we always have a slightly different war because things change from a gameplay perspective, and it is time to talk about things I would like to see changed for Civilization 7, and this time we are talking about, well, you guessed it, war. And no, we are not talking about how we get to the war point. We already did that in the first video, so if you want to see that, please check that out in the very first video made of the series. But this time we are just talking about how war functions, what we can do with the units, and definitely what can be improved. And the first thing I want to talk about is, let's talk about the AI when it comes to warfare. Especially Civilization 6 had quite a bit of issues at the release of the game. I would say when it comes to land warfare, we are now at the point where the AI is, let's just say, capable of not completely folding in the first two turns. And there is definitely room for improvement. But if you really want to see the AI shedding the bed, just go to naval warfare. Naval warfare right now is still in such a miserable state where the AI cannot really utilize it or does the dumbest thing you can do by sending out their convoys with tons and tons of units over the ocean, and they're sending them directly into my military ships, which will just sink them in a turn. And the AI is not learning from that. They are doing the same mistake over and over again, like a brain dead machine. And you're just wondering, what the hell are you doing there? Like, I get it. Sometimes you don't see where the convoy is going, and sometimes you are ending up in a bad position with it, right? But at least after the first time, you might think you want to send some protective ships with your convoy, and the AI is not doing that. Speaking about naval warfare, let's also talk about the air warfare here very quickly. Please do a revision on it. Like, it's not like the AI is not using air units, but there are too many moments where I have literally multiple cities or multiple areas which are not really well protected because I know that the AI will not act on it. And that is a very bad thing to do, right? It teaches you as the player the wrong lessons, which is, they're not coming here with air. And, well, it makes the AI look stupid. So please also have a look at air warfare. But before we really talk about future technologies, let's take a step back to the beginning of Civilization games where you don't have tanks, where you don't really have artillery and all that. Let's go back to the classic era. Let's go back to the medieval era. And let's talk about that. Because in most Civ games, and Civ 6 included at the beginning, early warfare was a pain in the ass. It's no fun, it is slow, it is more expensive than later on, and you don't sometimes really achieve a lot. Especially Civilization 6 was notorious for it because you had one siege unit. You had the catapults from the classic to the Renaissance era, and that was it. That's all you had to deal with. And it was so bad. Now, thankfully, they fixed that over time, right? They added more units and improvements to the game, like the battering rams, the siege towers, and for me, very important, the trebuchet, right? They added the trebuchet into the medieval warfare, and you realized, okay, they understood that there was a problem there, and they had to fix that. So now, early warfare is much easier to do and feels much better. What I would love to see is that we are actually taking the lessons we have learned here with Civ 6 and the early era and transfer it into the endgame. Because in the endgame, we are falling again into the same trap where basically you have only one siege unit, which is doing all the sieging. And yes, I know you can now send airplanes and all that into it as well. But when it comes to land warfare, you have one siege unit and that's it. I would love to see a little bit more of options to take a city beyond just siege units. And to make something very clear, I am not advocating the idea that cities should be easy to be taken, especially if they have walls and especially if they have units to defend them. Sieges are complicated. They are in real life or have been in real life, right? And they have been in the Civ games for a long while, and they make sense from a gameplay perspective because your cities can also be your castles. This is actually something I really enjoyed in the Total War games back in the day, where you had to make your decision at some point. Is the city becoming more like a castle, or is the city becoming more city and is becoming a more economic powerhouse, right? You don't really have that in the Civ games. Like, you're just building your defensive capabilities, but you build also your economic capabilities. And I would like to see the idea of maybe you have to make some decisions so that you have strategic cities which are really just there for the defense. And then you have some of the cities which are more your heartland and which are more on the economic side of things, right? I would love to see that. But let's talk about something else which is super important here. And without it, you couldn't even wage a war, and that is units, right? You need your military. You need your units, because without them, there is no defense and there is no conquering. So please, the one thing I would love to see when it comes to units is give me more variety. Right now, you have basically 5 landly units, right, for most of the game. You have your infantry, you have your cavalry, anti cavalry, range unit, and a siege unit. And that's that. I would love to see more units who are also supporting each other. Like, you might remember that we had stacking in the old Civ games, and I know I will now say something which will make some people angry here, but I'm actually glad that we moved away from stacking. I think that the Ball of Death stacking ability was not a good thing. It was pretty boring for the player. It wasn't good for gameplay. So I'm kind of happy with what they try to do in Civ 6, that you can still put one and the same unit together to make them stronger and all, but it isn't really stacking anymore. So what I would love to see in Civ 7 is that you can actually put units next to each other and they will support each other. So let me just give you an example here. You have an infantry unit, you have a cavalry unit, and together they're becoming a combined arms unit. They are still two separate units, but now they are getting a buff, which gives them more defense or gives them more attacks, something like that. I would love to see that. And when it comes to variety of units, I would love to see more support units or more specialized units, right? And one other thing I would really love to see is when it comes to the nations, I would love to see nations having more specific military units throughout the ages. I think that's always a little bit disheartening when you're choosing a leader and their special unit is a military unit which is strong in the classic era, and you are so quickly out of the classic era that it never really pays off. Or even like medieval ages are still pretty easy to leave behind. And I would just love to see more variety there with special units too. I know that's a lot to ask. That is a lot to ask. It would bring a lot of balance issues. And we have seen that just throwing more units at the problem is not always good with Civ games. So I know that is a bit of a gamble, but I would love to see that for variety. But in itself, I think the biggest problem, TLDR, when it comes to military interventions in the Civ games, right now it's the AI. The AI too often is just falling apart, no matter which difficulty you are on, and that has to be improved drastically. With that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like. And also, if you love strategy games, subscribe to the channel, because that's what we are focusing on here. And yes, of course, we will cover the Civilization gameplay reveal in just a few days. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe. Bye-bye.